Kia ora. Ki te whetū arahi o tēnei rā, ka puta mai ko Waipunarangi, tēnā koe. Ki ngā kaiwhakarapu aratanga, Baden, tēnā koe, ngā mihi mō tō mahi i te wā wero nei. Ki Shade, Tracy, Ngaio, Ruth Ma, tēnā koe, ngā mihi mō tō manaaki ki ahau. Ki Crystal, tēnā koe, hoki ki te kaipere, tēnā koe. Ko taumutu te maunga, ko mangatahi te moana, ko mangapoike te awa, ko Ngāti Kahungunu ki Wairo tōku iwi, ko Ngai Tahu Matawhaiti tōku hapu. Tēnā koe e te whanaunga, Nigel. I te kore, ki te pō, ki te ao marama. From the void into the night and into the world of light, te ao marama, is at the heart of great leadership. And our task as leaders is to reach into te kore, which is all around us, and release that potential and create more light in te ao marama. And as Baden has said, these are times when people are looking for effective solutions as we navigate from darkness to light, and that we stand at the threshold of potential with climate change, with the task force, or fast track, and so many other challenges that we face. But this kōrero is about wayfinding leadership, which for many of you will be an affirmation, because it's a form of leadership that emerges from deep within the DNA of the Pacific, where each one of us are the living face of brave men and women who went on journeys of discovery to new horizons, and that each generation has been called to be a wayfinder in search of better ways of doing things and better places as we call the future to us, just as we're called to be the wayfinders of today. So today's talk is based on this puka puka, which came out in 2015. I was studying at Harvard University at the time, and I received an invitation from Huia Publishing to write a book. And being a good academic, I read everything I could about wayfinding, Polynesian navigation, and so forth, and wrote a book based on books. So probably the smartest thing I've ever done was to contact my friend John Panaho and say, I need to be put in contact with the real navigator. And John put me in contact with Hotu Barclay Kerr. And we worked together, and Hotu breathed life into this work. So I really want to give a big mihi to Hotu, but also to all the navigators in the room, to all the wayfinders in our midst today. Kia ora, Shade, being one of them, one of the many, and to those who are working on the waka this very moment to secure it. But since the book came out in 2015, we've been on this incredible journey together. Over 20,000 people now have done workshops based on wayfinding leadership in all sorts of organisations, from the judiciary, the judges, Department of Corrections, government agencies, Māori communities across the nation, and also even overseas. Somehow this book is just finding its way because it has its own mauri, and it's finding its way into people's laps and lives. And we even teach, like Thunderbird University, who have space engineers who are the wayfinders of space, and they do their projects on wayfinding and send them to me. So I'm sharing with you some of the key insights. I've only got a short amount of time, but you can, there's a talk as well online, a TED talk, and also the book itself, which has been turned into an audio book. But I just want to share some of the main ture or principles that we cover in the book. And again, thanks to Hotu for infusing this this message, this rongoa, with his experiences, his lived experiences on the waka. So the first two there, or principle, is to step into our rangatira space, to stand in that place where we carry ourselves, how we show up in the world. And Hotu describes this rangatira space as a place of deep humility. It's leadership with others and not above them. So we look at rā rangatira as the way that we describe this word, rangatira. So rāranga, to weave, and tira, the people. So when I attended the Hui Taumata recently and just listening to the kōrero around kotahitanga and really hearing, the invitation for all of us to be a thread in the whole, for each of us to lend our own specialness, expertise and effort as we contribute to this weaving that takes place, that we are a movement through time, that we're building on the legacies and the contributions and the taonga tuku iho of our ancestors and adding to that as we consider the future and in preparation for our part in service of a bigger whole. So in the context of leadership, this is about also working with tension. So anybody in a leadership role noticed a little bit of tension in that role? Aye. So that's the brilliancy of this word, rā rangatira. It also means working with tension, because it's healthy to consider the right fit, the right balance, the kaupapa, what we're in service of, as we work in relationship with each other. And then you'll see there, we also have rā ngāti rā. I love this interpretation, which is from Whaia Rose Pere. And Whaia Rose would say, she kind of broke it up into those three wāhanga, those three parts. Rā meaning light, ngāti, to belong, rā, to the light. And as Whaia Rose would say, each and every one of us is a rā ngāti rā. A person of light who honos, who belongs to te ao marama, the world of light. So as we consider the leadership challenges before us in these times, it's to really support each person to cultivate, to release, to be standing in their own rā ngāti rā. And as leaders, to come and stand with others alongside them. Where on a waka, it isn't so much about leading from the front, although occasionally that is absolutely necessary, but it's really about encouraging everybody to develop the skills and to share knowledge and to build those relationships so that as we rā rangatira, we are building a strong fabric in our societies. But unfortunately, as we know, he rereke ake I te ao Pākehā, it's very different in the Pākehā approach to leadership, which is more of a command and control approach. So if you look at those arrows all lined up, going in the same direction, that's what we typically see in a lot of organisations, where people need to conform to a leader or a small group of people. But what we discuss in the book, and the research shows, is that form of leadership is weak form of leadership. That form of leadership weakens relationships. So when we find that the sense that we must all conform to this one way of doing things, or this one singular leader who has the vision, or a small group of people, what we find in the research is that, say to use the mast of a waka as an example, when they go to select a mast for the waka, they look for the mast where all the grains are interwoven, because that kind of mast can withstand great pressure. Right, the interweaving of all the mana of the people in the community, strengthening everybody to be in their own rā ngāti rā. Whereas the mast where all the arrows are in alignment, that snaps under pressure. So what we find is that sometimes organisations are doing really well under a certain kind of leader, that command and control approach. However, when they leave the organisation, a few weeks, a few months, things start to fray and fall apart. And from a Te Ao Māori perspective, that is not successful leadership. Because we know that true success is succession, that we're building a generation of leaders that are better than us. And to have that spirit and that generosity to really commit to bringing others through and succession for the future. So that's just a really quick insight into the first principle, which is stepping into our rangatira space. It's an opportunity to reflect on how we're going in our leadership, what are the things that we might need to let go, and what are those things that we need to strengthen, and who are we taking with us as we go on these journeys, and are we a community that wants to stay together when we arrive? The second part is the part I really love the most, thanks to Professor Charles Royal, who shared this philosophy of being. It's so different to the way that the Western world works. From a Te Ao Māori perspective, our task is to stay still in the present moment and pānui ngā tohu, read the signs, and to tune into those different signs and to make sense of the relationships between them. So it's what we would call systems thinking, but this is incredibly sophisticated, where we pay attention, and some of those signs are very subtle. But if we are moving from this place of stillness, we can imagine that island, that the future, that anamata that we want to call to us in the present. So have a look at this map here. Up the top is how so many organisations tend to plan their strategies. I mean, I even hear this language reaching into every corner of society, into our marae. This idea that we must have a vision and then we chart a direct, linear pathway to reach that vision. Ara tora tika, like straight to it. And then we have our KPIs and our indicators. But think about what might not be quite right about that approach, right? We're sort of like on a kind of direct path to reach our goal. That goal that we decided at a point in time is the place that we should be getting to. But we often do this planning or this visioning with our existing knowledge, with the routes that we've travelled before. It doesn't necessarily hold us well when we're in the unknown, like our ancestors, and going into new territories. Because what I see in a lot of organisations, and I work with auditors, accountants, economists, financiers as well, is that it has what we call square intelligence. So square intelligence being numbers, facts, figures, a predominance of rational logic, that kind of intelligence, right? And that we can just get really fixed on these narrow paths. But as many of us know, and especially in this rohi, and even this morning, we wake up and something unexpected, uninvited, maybe even unwelcome has happened. And we are called to respond with dynamic responsiveness, with all of our intelligence, our wisdom, our experiences that we've had, the knowledge that's been transmitted to each of us. And that we have to have this dynamic interplay between having a plan and a strategy, as I know many of you work on, but also the freedom, the flexibility and the adaptability to be able to respond well with what we call sphere intelligence. So you've got your square over there with the numbers, the facts, the figures, kei te pai, it's all fine, but it's the extent to which this dominates our decision making and our sphere, which is more holistic, where we appreciate the unseen as well as the seen. The toi whiti iho, that dynamic interplay between what we know and what we don't know, what we can see and what we can't see. So for the wayfinders, instead of that setting your eyes on a goal and just chasing it down, oh, ne. I, katapai, I. This is going to take a little bit of time for you to just let it bubble, okay? So it's okay if it's like, oh, what is this? Because for the purposes of navigation, it's called the ETUC method. We see ourselves as staying still, staying present, not reacting, but just calmly looking at the signs, sharing the information between each other, and we have a picture of the island in our mind's eye. But instead of like chasing it down, we pay attention to being present, we adjust to the signs, the star path, the wind as it appears on the ocean, the sun, the moon, the texture of clouds. We pay attention to all of the signs. So consider some of the signs that you orient to. And the ka puta mai te motu i te pairangi. So the island will appear on the horizon, but still we stay in our space of mastery, in our rā ngati rā space, and eventually the island comes to us. So instead of that sort of sense of, chasing down the island going to the goal, our task is to bring the present here, right now, and the island will come to us. So it's a very different way of being in this world. It's a philosophy of being. So I'll just leave that with you to ponder, because if we work from this place of dynamic stillness and responsiveness and pay attention, we can travel into the unknown through uncertainty. We don't always have to have the answers ahead of time, but to really pay attention to the world around us. So this is a world of becoming, instead of that going, striving, goal-conquering mode that so many of us have been acculturated to. And I've already mentioned the distinction between square intelligence and sphere. So trusting and believing in all of our intelligence. And to read the signs. So thinking about, in the work that you do, what are those signs that we orient to, such as our values, our amazing Māori values. Kaitiakitanga, manaakitanga, whanaungatanga. Because these values are all about relationships. They teach us how to be in good relationship with each other, with te taiao, ngā atua katoa. And every time we make a choice in favour of our values as our guiding lights, we bring the future into being in the present. And I better practice some taimatanga as well. Whakakapi ahau. Kia ora.